not met me yet, so I'm Victoria Deakin. I am the new director of the Regional Academy. So I'm now on, I believe, week 5 in post. I will pass you over to Lois to introduce herself.
Hello, I'm Lois Cavallaro, and I've had a bit of a dual role here in the Academy in that I'm Deputy Head and I run our Digital Skills Development Network.
And if I pass over to Alison next, and then we'll come into Liz and Chris.
Hi, so I'm Alison Gordon, and I'm Head of Financial Management at Oxford Health, and I'm also a careers lead for the South East region in the FFF network in the South East, which is why I'm here to talk about careers.
And Liz, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, I'm Liz Taylor. I'm a project manager at the Regional Finance Academy in the South East, and I support a couple of the networks, FFF being one of them and Skills Development Network the other. Thank you.
And last but not least, Chris.
Yep, good morning, Chris Fleckney. I'm also a project manager in the Southeast Southeast Regional Finance Academy, and I'm taking responsibility for the careers aspect.
Fab. So, Eva, do you want us to pop our slides up and we'll take it from here?
Brilliant. Yeah, that'll be great. Thank you.
Okay, so hopefully you've come expecting to hear a little bit about how you can get involved with careers today. So let me just rely on the joys of technology. Hang on a sec. Okay. Hopefully that is coming up on everybody's screens. Brilliant. Okay. So, as I said, we are here to talk to you today about getting involved in careers promotion. I believe this topic's been covered in a couple of Value Makers events before. But over the last sort of month or so, we've been really shaping up ideas on how we think the Value Makers Network can support us moving forward. So we want to share some of that with you today, as well as just raise the profile on a few bits that we've got going on in the region. So I'm going to just give you a brief introduction and overview, and then I'm going to pass to Alison, who's going to share with you her career story and why she likes getting involved in careers. As she mentioned, she's the FFF lead for our careers objective. Lois and myself are then going to talk about the role of value makers and how we think that you can support us moving forward, getting involved in some of our careers promotion. Lois is then going to fill you in on our Finance Insights placements. So if you're not familiar on that, she'll give you an overview. And again, you can understand a bit more about how you might be able to promote that in your areas. And then we'll finish up with a bit of question time if you've got anything you want to ask us. So just a bit of an overview to start with. Those of you that aren't familiar, we are the Regional Finance Academy. So we sit under one NHS Finance. We were founded in 2022. And you can see on the map there, our geographical spread is quite considerable. So we go from Oxford all the way down to the Isle of Wight, all the way across to Dover. And we provide support not just to finance, but also to procurement, digital data, analytical and technical colleagues. So we reckon that makes the staff that we support somewhere in the region of about 8,000 people. So our South East stats from the finance side, we've got 285 value makers. So that number's increasing each time we draw those stats, which is brilliant. We have 115 FACE. So those of you that don't know, that's a finance and clinical educator. We've got health and wellbeing champions, I&D ambassadors, sponsors, sponsees. There are a whole range of networks, including the ones listed here, that you can get involved with, that are all designed to connect our staff together. So we launched our careers strategy in 2024. And in this diagram, you can see we had 3 pillars of focus as to how we thought we could promote careers in the region. So the first was making our workplace the best it can be. And that ties into FFF in terms of our agenda. Second was attract new talent. And that's the bit that we're going to focus on today. And third was developing the talent we have. So when it comes to attracting new talent, obviously what we'd love to have is that every time we advertise a role, We get loads of really suitable, credible candidates, and we're able to fill our vacancies, because I would imagine that, like us in our host organisation, you probably have a large number of vacancies in your finance teams, and that's probably not the experience that you've got at the moment. We think there's probably a lot that we can do, and that's why we wrote this strategy, at working collaboratively to attract new talent. So there's been a number of initiatives that have come forwards since we wrote the strategy that help us in this area. And what we want to talk about today is that actually we need you. So this is a little bit of a call to arms. So if you weren't expecting that, surprise, but we'd really love to engage you as a Value Maker Network, and to think about how you can support us with reaching out to schools and universities and encouraging students to consider the NHS as a really positive career, and try to put finance on the roadmap. So I'm going to pause at that point and just hand over to Alison to share with you a little bit about herself and why she thinks getting involved in careers is so great. Alison, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So as I said, as it says on the slide, in fact, so I'm currently head of a financial management team. So Victoria just asked me to talk a bit about how I have got there, really, and how that relates to why I'm supporting careers. So kind of started when I was at university, that I was thinking of applying for the NHS graduate scheme in finance. So I got some work experience in a shared services organisation, NHS Shared Services, and they let me go there for 4 weeks and gave me sort of good work experience doing management accounts, creditors, debtors, financial accounts, and just got some good experience. I then did apply for the graduate scheme. I didn't get on it first time round, but I applied again and got on it second time round. And while I was, so that I'd left university at that stage, so I then got a bank contract with a PCT, as it was at the time, in their finance department. So I was quite lucky in getting that, in that my mum was a district nurse and knew some people in that finance department. So I got a contact as a way in, but they did give me a bank contract, and I worked there for about 7 or 8 months, and again got some really good experience. And then I did the graduate scheme, and for those who haven't experienced that, that is lots of placements, and again it is a bit similar to doing sort of a work experience but at a higher level, in that you are getting lots of experience of different areas, and it does require sort of line managers and placement managers to devote quite a bit of their time to develop you and show you how to do things. And then after that, I did a costing accountant in an acute trust for 15 months. And then I came to Oxford Health, which is quite a long time ago. In 2008, I came to Oxford Health as an AA directorate accountant, and then did that to 2016 when I got my current role. So I've worked at Oxford Health quite a long time now. But what I thought was sort of relevant, why I've focused on the early days of my career, really, is because I was given quite a lot of experience, opportunities for work experience, and had quite a lot of lots of helpful line managers and people who did help me develop at that stage, and that really did help me in my career, and did help me sort of decide that I definitely wanted to work in NHS finance. So I've seen that it really works doing that, because it's worked for me, but also kind of like to give something back and give other people the same opportunity as well. And then I now manage a team of 23 people. So we always have turnover. I always need to recruit people. So I also see the value of getting people into NHS finance, and making sure that we have sort of succession planning and talent coming through. And I guess my last point is that I think NHS finance is a great place to work. I'm talking to a group of value makers, so I guess you agree with me, but I think it's a really interesting place to work. There's always changes, but also my experience has been it's a great place in terms of work-life balance, in terms of being given development opportunities and things as well. So again, I just think it would be good to get that message out to other people of that this is a great career, really.
Brilliant. Thank you, Alison. And as you say, hopefully that's something that kind of resonates with others as to, we're all quite passionate about what we do. So following on from that, it's about us sharing with you today how we think you could support us further. And some of this you might already be doing. So it's time for a little bit of interaction. Apologies if you thought you were coming along just to listen. Anyone who's been on a course with me before knows I like a bit of interaction. So it's question time. First question, I'm just interested to know, Alison's just shared with us her story. How did you begin your career in the NHS? So Alison, I'm the same. I actually came in via the grad scheme route, which gave me invaluable experience. Is anybody willing, by raise of hands, to share how they came in to the NHS? Just a heads up, there are more questions. So, Corinne, do you want to join in?
Oh yeah, thanks for that, and thanks for sharing your story as well. It was really interesting. I sort of stumbled across the NHS. Actually, I was in private practice, accountancy practice, and I was looking around for almost like a controller style role, having qualified, and it was almost like, I think it was through an agency effectively that saw NHS. I was like, NHS, well, I wasn't even aware of really NHS careers either. I think it was, a lot of the advertising wasn't great from that point of view. So I think ever since I've just been working for the NHS, and I really enjoy what I do in terms of I do the technical side, so it sort of fits my background as well, from a sort of audit and accountancy background that I had in a private practice. So I think it has a lot of challenges, isn't it? But I've definitely liked working in the NHS. You can feel like you're putting something back, isn't it? And as well, so but I think, like you said, in terms of the career, like selling the NHS, because actually we used to do it in our private practice. We'd actually go to career, schools, and actually have a stand and all of that, and never remember any NHS trusts being there. So it's definitely something we need to work on, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
No, thank you for sharing. And actually, your points are completely things that I've related to. I spoke to some of the professional bodies, so CIMA and ACCA, and they've said the same. When they speak to their members, people are a bit like, what do you mean there's NHS finance? Like, NHS is doctors and nurses, isn't it? So yeah, there's a massive bit that I think we could still do so much more. I think a lot of people stumble, as you say, into their careers in the NHS almost by accident rather than design. Anyone want to prove me wrong on that? Someone's going to stick their hand up and go, no, I knew when I was 7 I wanted to work in it. Go on then, Tim.
No, quite the opposite. I'm going to prove you right. So I've got a very similar story to Corinne. Yeah, I was in accountancy practice, and then we were auditing some NHS bodies, and then sort of switched sides. But very much stumbled into it.
I think it is generally the norm. Go on then, Lisa.
I've got a similar experience to Corinne. Hadn't ever considered the NHS, and I'm casting my mind back a long time now, when they used to have milk rounds at universities. I never saw anything around the NHS there. I don't know if they still do milk rounds, or anything like that. But do we promote ourselves as an employer of choice? At those key places? I'm not sure that we do, and I think that's a real opportunity. And I similarly found out about NHS finance via a recruitment agency, and I was quite experienced at the time, so I think I was qualified and had been working for 20 years in other industries, when a costing job came up, of which I had quite a lot of experience of, and I went and did reference costs. I think was my first ever NHS job for an organisation when they probably weren't that focused on. But it is interesting. We could do a lot more to promote ourselves.
No, absolutely. Lois?
I'm not from a finance background, but I think it's important to highlight the flexibility of the NHS and how good it is to sort of develop your career and find your next step within the NHS. So I worked in a completely different sector previously. I worked in a hospitality and events role. I had my son, and sadly I had an employer that wasn't that flexible with sort of childcare, flexing hours, dropping to part-time. So I came out of that role and I went to work at my local GP surgery on reception part-time. That was 14 years ago, and I'm still in the NHS now, and I've been able to sort of progress rapidly, find my next step in the NHS, and now I'm doing a learning and development role, running the skills development network for digital. I do comms, and that's all part of my sort of university background. So I'm really enjoying what I'm doing and supporting finance teams and things with their learning and development too. So I think it's a great organisation to join if you want flexibility and an understanding employer as to how you strike up a work-life balance.
No, thank you, Lois, and completely agree. I think there are so many benefits, aren't there, once you get your foot in the door. But it's kind of back to Elisa's comment: how do we raise the profile in the beginning, which hopefully is something we're going to come on to. Alex, do you want to share how you got into the NHS?
Yeah, so it's slightly different compared to people previous mentioned ways in, as people mentioned just now. So I came in as an apprentice about 10 years ago. And stayed ever since. So I think certainly when I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was younger, and I think that's probably becoming more and more the trend. So I didn't know what I wanted to do, enjoyed maths, and thought, I'll tell you what, I'll give finance a go as an apprentice, and yeah, enjoyed it to a certain degree. So I've stayed around, and I think what's really helped me, certainly, is sort of when I came in as an apprentice at the age of 18, was it's that you've got a real clear career pathway. So well set out in terms, as simple as the bandings, you can take those next steps whenever you want to progress your career. So that was always sort of quite clear for me to sort of try and do some form of career path.
No, brilliant, actually, and it's so lovely to have those kind of pathways through, as you say. I think I've done a placement outside the NHS in the past in a finance function of 4 people, and we sort of take for granted really that we have these really big finance functions with all of these opportunities, as well as a broader network across the wider NHS. And we almost forget that actually that's not the norm for every sector. So yeah, there are so many different routes, aren't there? And it's brilliant to hear that you're still here 10 years on. So yeah, we'll sign you up for doing some talks then, Alex. So next question then. Have you ever visited a school or college to talk about careers? So we'll do this one just by raising hands. So raise your hand if you have ever been out and spoken to young people about joining the NHS. How many people's hands are we going to get? Oh, wow, really? My goodness. Well, back to what we've been saying, though, actually. It's not sort of something that we all do, is it? Okay, so Elisa?
My hand up, but I'm just putting my hand up. Just quickly that whereas I may not have done it, our HR department might be doing it. So I'm not sure we're giving 100% view on that. And I think it would be interesting to see whether or not generally NHS careers are promoted, because we have a very good apprenticeship team, for example. And we have had apprenticeship, so I think they might need to caveat it as there probably are other things going on.
No, thanks. That's a valid point. Corinne?
Yeah, I'm not aware that ours do though. I'm sure we might have asked before. I'm not aware we've done anything like that ever.
No.
So it's just it seems quite shocking, doesn't it? But I think some of it's like time as well. I suppose like you've got your day job. It's like how do I section off more time to do this, even though I want to do it. Like I say, because I used to do it in my other when I was a trainee and I was doing it. So it's like it's hard, isn't it?
It's really hard, and hopefully we're going to make that a little bit easier in terms of the offer that we've got, which we'll sort of come on to. But our thinking is actually we've got the benefit as the academy, we've got the network that spans the whole region, we've got the ability to generate centralised resources. So actually, is there an opportunity for us to work in partnership where effectively, if I was to ring you and say, Corinne, are you free next Thursday, for argument's sake, could you spend 20 minutes giving a bit of a talk with these resources? That probably feels a bit more doable to you than having to go out, contact the school, write the presentation, you know, do all of the logistics yourself. So I think there's possibly a bit of a solution. Okay, next question. Would you like to? So if you had, on the basis of what I've just said, if you had the right materials and the right training to be able to go in and talk to students, is that something that either fills you with excitement, it's a chance to get out the office, brilliant, go and inspire some young minds, versus, my God, that's my worst nightmare, don't ever make me do that? So we've got reactions on here. So let's do thumbs up if we're thinking this is a brilliant idea, I'd be up for that. And there's an awful shocked face on your reaction if you're thinking, don't ever send me, I'm not the person for that. Right, so we've got a couple of thumbs up coming through. So far, no one's done a terrified face.
I was just going to do a terrified face. Can I just ask, when you, because you, rather than it being me as a person,
yeah,
could I answer as me as representing the finance department? Because I feel that it shouldn't just be, you know, me on this call. It should be, would ECA Finance want to?
Do you think your finance team would?
I think that, you know, we would definitely want somebody to represent us at a forum like that, but it might not be me.
No, that's fine. And part of this is also exploring. So I appreciate that people sign up to all sorts of networks. And part of the reasons of tapping into the Value Maker network is it's an established network. Generally, there are people who are already engaged with seeing the value of NHS finance. And as you say, actually, I fully recognise we've got 285 of us. Not all 285 are going to be really enthusiastic about doing this. But even if 50 of them are, then we've got our sort of careers champions. James, you're Jim, aren't you? James or Jim?
I answer to either, generally. When I was in Brighton, we had people who went to the schools and such like, but they tended to pick the people who were younger. I was viewed as someone that perhaps might scare the students with the grey hair and everything. So send the people who are in their 20s, who can perhaps relate to them a little better than me. And whilst at QVH we don't really do that, purely because the team's so small that we can't recruit from youngsters into it at all, and there's little point in going to events and going, yes, join the NHS, but don't join us.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's really tricky, isn't it? I feel like I've kind of hit that point. I've been saying to my team, you know, I've hit that generational step now. I'm definitely not down with the kids. But yeah, there is a balance, isn't there? Because it kind of leads on to my next question, which is, can you remember someone who inspired you in your early career? And I think it's just interesting to reflect back. You know, we've discussed that we've all come into the NHS in slightly different ways, and actually at different points in our careers for different reasons. I know I can think back to a couple of people that inspired me, and actually they weren't necessarily the young ones. So I think whilst we've got this perception that we want people to be relatable and go in and speak to people on their level, actually you don't do yourself a disservice, because I think some people have really inspiring career stories regardless of age. And I think it's worth us sort of picking up and capturing that. So open the floor again. Is anybody willing to share? Is there anyone that inspired you early on in your career? Can you remember thinking, my goodness, I want to be like that person? No one's met anyone inspirational. Oh dear, just me then. Alison?
Well, I sort of covered this a bit, but I think, you know, the people that offered me work experience and my early line managers were all quite inspiring, and you know, they were all pretty enthusiastic about their jobs. But also, like when I was a graduate trainee, our finance director was not a typical. She's a woman for a start, and she was not the typical what you'd think of as a finance director. She was a bit sort of quirky and things, and that was quite inspiring as well, to see, you know, actually, you know, anyone can do that role. You don't have to be the kind of sort of stereotypical kind of person that people think of as a finance director.
Yeah. Elisa?
Just to say that I don't think people have inspired me to change my career path, but without a doubt, I've met people and seen how they behave and their, how they conduct themselves. And that has really molded the person I've become in work. So it's slightly different, but I've met quite a few people who I've, studied and watched and just thought, I want to be like that. But it wasn't really attached to a career thing, but maybe I don't know.
No, and maybe I think again we've said for the NHS actually we don't put ourselves out there in the first place. So it's again back to the conversation I had with the professional bodies. SEMA and ACCA were saying to me that other areas, other companies will do sort of videos and vlogs on their websites to promote to the accountancy profession. And I think again there's a real missed opportunity for us in the NHS to put ourselves out there and raise our profile for all sorts of people coming in at different entry points. You'll be delighted to hear that was the last question. Thank you very much for engaging in that section. But it kind of leads us on to what's our aim for this session. So when Future Focus Finance kicked off, for those of you that remember that far back, its initial success stemmed from the NHS networks. We've always been strongest when we connect ourselves together, and that's why things like these Value Maker forums are so valuable. So for the South East, what we're wanting to do is strengthen those networks further. So using these Value Maker network meetings, we would like to launch career champion training. So probably realistically a 2-hour course to give you the confidence to go out and speak to schools and educational institutions with a standard pack of materials. So it's a course that you'd do once. It covers presentation skills. It covers a general overview of what a career in NHS finance looks like, so that effectively you've got that corporate messaging too, because we'd be asking you to speak not just about your own organisation, but just promoting NHS careers in general. We then want to offer virtual support sessions. So if you want to do drop-ins and you're able to, if you've got any queries that have come up that you can't answer, and just provide you with kind of that wraparound support that deals with the logistics. So we'd be the ones as the Academy that would engage with local educational institutions. We'd act as that single point of contact. We've already got an email address that's set up for careers. Lois has done a fantastic job in the last 12 months of connecting to numerous careers hubs across our region, various different leads with job titles that I'd never even heard of. So we've built that kind of infrastructure behind the scenes of relevant people that can help us engage with young people for careers. So we can then hopefully come up with a programme of engagement that means that you as our Value Maker network can help us deliver key messages. Ultimately, we believe that the finance workforce are best placed to share their career stories to motivate future staff coming on board. You're the ones that have lived and breathed it. You understand what it feels like to work in NHS finance, the joys, the highs, the lows. And actually, that's something that we think we could share with the wider community. Elisa.
I was just thinking about this and correlating it with a number of opportunities that we would be actively promoting as part of it. And I think that's the little bit that I'm at the moment wouldn't have confidence. I could go out and do this and then, well, what's the opportunity I could apply for? And at East Kent at the moment, we haven't committed to anything. So it's just about doing that triangulation piece, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely great. And we'll come on. Lois is going to talk later about the insights placements, which I know you've had one at East Kent. But yeah, we're very mindful. I think it's trying to join the dots between raising awareness, which is brilliant. But then, as you say, somebody then goes, great, where do I sign up? How do we kind of pick that up? So yeah, completely recognise that. So we want to have career champions. We're not trying to define it as a completely separate role. We see this as being delivered through Value Makers rather than creating yet another network. But essentially, you would be a career champion, inspiring people to explore a career in the NHS. So using Academy provided materials to present to educational institutions, supporting and promoting career routes into the NHS, being willing to support placements in your own organisation, whether that's a 1-week work experience to a 12-month insight placement to apprenticeships. We're going to look at something called Access Accountancy, if people have heard of that. That's being explored in the east of England and the Midlands at the moment. There's all sorts of different initiatives that are about encouraging people to think about us as a career. And finally, sharing your career story. Again, you can give others an insight into different ways to approach something that perhaps myth busts. Sometimes people think there are a lot of barriers to starting a career in something, and all it can take is somebody sharing their sort of back to front career story, or I stumbled across it in this way, to normalise it a little bit and realise it actually is accessible to a range of people. So how do I join in? I'm going to introduce Chris. So Chris introduced himself at the beginning of the session. Chris has been busily working behind the scenes. As I've said, Lois has spent the last 12 months building our connections and creating a fantastic platform for us. Chris is now going to take this and translate it into action with hopefully our value makers. So I've popped his email address on here. Chris, do you want to just have a little chip in as to what you've been working on?
Yeah, sure. So basically, there's two strands that I've been working on, and one of those is the sort of strategy and governance, the overarching piece of how this will look, who will manage the program of work, and how any sort of key performance indicators will be measured and reported on, and to who that will be. And then perhaps the more important piece of work is the sort of operational and administration side, which sort of takes the basic process of how do we firstly recruit people into this, what training do they need, what resources do we need to equip them with when they go out to schools and colleges. And then the most important piece I would suggest is what happens, or how do we promote ourselves to schools, colleges and other educational institutions. And then when we have done that, how do we receive requests from them, and how do we process those through to the point where someone who is trained and equipped can go out to deliver a short talk at that particular institution. So that's pretty much what I'm working on at the moment.
Brilliant, thank you. So I just ask you, look out for future comms if this is something that you think you'd be interested in, and thank you for those of you that raised your thumbs up when I asked about would you be willing. If it is something that you think you'd like to get involved with, we recognise we don't have all the answers, which is why we're engaging and coming out and interacting. We'd love for you to get on board. We're going to be launching stuff in April on this. We will have a careers programme group that sits there. So there's been a careers steering group that's been running in the background that some of you may have been along to. So please do get in touch with Chris. Let us know you're interested, and look out for communication that's going to come out via the Value Maker Network. So I'm going to pass to Lois on one of her favourite subjects, finance insights placements.
Absolutely, great, thank you. So the Finance Insights Placement Scheme from One NHS Finance, it was initially piloted in London in 2023 with great effect. There was around 6 placements in the pilot year, and it's something very much that Julian Kelly wanted to sort of explore, being a sort of very EDI type approach to careers placements in the NHS, and particularly over finance. So we want to develop our careers pathways in the NHS. So after successfully launching in London in 2023, it was launched nationally in 2024, and there was around 38 placements across the South East. So just a bit of context to it, really. The reason for doing it, our NHS Finance senior leadership workforce isn't really reflective of our wider teams and population, and it's thought that around 23% of finance teams in the NHS are from a BAME background, but represent only 8% of our directors. common misconception that young people from disadvantaged backgrounds don't always do as well as their counterparts, and only 25% of those young people go on to university compared to 45% of their better off peers. We know that the NHS has a national graduate training scheme to attract future leaders who have a degree, but there's no equivalent programme for people from different backgrounds. So the Finance Insights Placement Scheme has introduced 12-month paid work experience placement for a year 13 school or college leaver who is not planning on going to university. The criteria currently says that they have to be from a lower socioeconomic background, in that they could have received free school meals sometime over the last 6 years. So we've currently got 2 young people in the South East on the placement at the moment, and I'm delighted to extend a warm welcome to Natalie Wallace and Jada Adams, who have joined us from Surrey and Borders Partnership, who I'll introduce in a moment, just to talk about their experience on the scheme. And we've got another young person over with Elisa in East Kent, Damien, who will hopefully join us on some of our drop-in sessions. So the scheme's doing really well nationally. We've got around 10 host organisations for September 2025, which include, you can see them up on the screen there. So we've got Southern Health, Surrey and Borders again, Kent and Medway, the CSU, East Kent Hospitals, Kent Community Health, etc. So have I got a slide after this one? I'll just see. Yeah, so we've got some drop-in sessions that we've arranged. Starting on Wednesday, the 26th of February, we've got some lunchtime sessions and also some late afternoon sessions to try and attract young people to coming to find out a little bit more about the Finance Insights Placement Scheme and why they should apply. So these will be open for parents, students, teachers, etc. But yeah, the idea is that they get a 12-month paid work experience placement at Band 2, and they will rotate around a finance department, learning various different elements of a job in finance and what sort of roles there are. So if I may ask Natalie and Jada, if it's okay, just to sort of give your insights as to what the scheme has brought your organisation, what you've had to do as a placement manager. Jada, sort of why you've applied and how you're getting on, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I basically applied for the placement scheme because I was studying finance and business in college, and I wasn't too sure on like where I wanted to take my career and what I wanted to do in the future, like whether it was going to university or something like that. And then my form tutor actually showed me about the placement scheme, and I decided, I was like, I'm going to apply, but I didn't have like high hopes, so I wasn't too sure on what I wanted to do. But then I actually got it, and then like getting into it, it's a big change because it's different from college, and like you're so used to being in a college environment, and then going into an office is something different, but it also does like set you up for what's to come in the future and like prepares you, because you also get to like meet a lot of new people, and I feel like I've made a lot of connections with a lot of different people where you're working in 4 different teams and you spend a lot of time with each different team, so you get to build connections, and then you always know that like if you're struggling with something, you can just speak to your line manager or someone who you've worked with, and they'll be there to like support you. So it's not like you're just going into work and you don't know what to do. You have got a lot of support, and it's really helpful, and it does like it has helped me a lot like develop my skills as well.
Great.
Yeah,
that sounds really good, Jada. And what sort of things have you been learning so far? Which departments have you worked with in finance?
So far I've worked with the contracts team, and then at the moment I'm in financial management, and then I'll be going to financial accounting next week. But I've learned like a lot of new stuff. Like I've definitely developed my skills on Excel a lot.
Great. Brilliant. Sounds Sounds great. And Natalie, for you, how's it been being a placement manager? What has it brought the organisation?
Yeah, so we've historically had both graduates and AAT apprentices in our finance team. So this was a new role that we had. I think for us, it's really valuable because actually we're able to offer a breadth of experience across all the different teams within finance. I think the only challenge we probably encountered to start with is just getting the team engaged and on board, because it is so cross-cutting. You kind of need those key leads in each of the teams that are willing to take on and do the training. And that does take some time and resource out of the day job for those individuals. So it's identifying the right people that can really support the trainees in the placement to ensure that they get what they need and that they're trained and they're able to contribute into the day-to-day role. But other than that, it's been a really valuable scheme, and Jada's doing really well.
That's so fantastic to hear, and thank you so much for joining us. I think it's a great scheme. What you can do as value makers is really promote this widely, and you saw the host organisations for 2025 on the previous slide. If you have any connections into local schools or any near where you work, please do promote this scheme as they're signed up to take on a young person from 2025. So applications have been open since September. They're open through till the 5 p.m. on Friday the 23rd of May. So we're hoping to sort of start shortlisting around June into early July. And around mid-July, we'll be doing interviews and offers sent to successful candidates, ready to sort of start induction and onboarding around August and start officially in September 2025. So please do promote it, because it's such a shame if these places go unfilled, and it's a great opportunity and such a unique way of getting into the NHS and starting to take your next best step, basically.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lois. Were there any questions from anyone? Yeah, Alex?
So just hopefully a quick question from an employer's point of view. Is there still opportunity for us? Again, I'm trying to battle internally whether or not we could potentially host. Is that still a possibility at this stage, or is there a cut-off date?
You're still welcome to host, yeah, Lois.
Yeah, there was a cut-off date. However, we are widely promoting the scheme in Sussex, because East Sussex are one of the host organisations. And so, it's not to say that if we had plenty of applicants in your area that we couldn't divert one to you if you're willing to host.
Yeah, okay, no, that's really helpful, thank you.
Yeah, and sorry, Elisa.
No, I think just a question for Jada, really, on the sort of practical aspects of the rotation through finance, whether or not you find that helpful, or do you think you might prefer to sort of stay somewhere longer and really get your own role established? And I guess the second question is, do you feel any anxiety at it coming to an end in September, and then what is going to happen to you? Because I mean, there's sort of real questions, aren't they, that I'm guessing will be on your mind.
So for the first question, it was like, I do find it helpful that you get to spend so much time with each different team, because each different team you learn something different. So if you needed help with something that you're currently working on, you could always ask somebody from a previous team, which they might know something about, which can also help you. And then for the second question, I think it is like quite anxious, because it's like it could get to September and I could be unemployed, but then I know I have got a lot of support like from Natalie, and then there's other like people in the trust that will help me like find somewhere to go onto and like progress onto. So I do know I have like got that support, and I'm going to start looking within like the next upcoming months, just so I know that I have something sorted out for me and like kind of a plan to fall back on.
I think that's so important, and I think that it almost needs to be guidance, doesn't it, for the placeholder organisations, about making sure that you know, that placement students aren't feeling that anxiety, and actually, you know, with plenty of time to go, we've got a sort of onward plan for each of the students. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Catherine, do you want to come in?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to ask. So, school leavers are meant to stay in education, aren't they? Is that right? Until 18?
Until 18, yeah.
So does this count then as them being 9?
It's after that. It's after they've done year 13, isn't it, Lois? So once,
18
once they've
plus.
finished their education, there's a window of, I believe we take up to the age of 21 for this scheme. So there's the 3 years post leaving formal education.
Yeah. And part of the criteria now is that they could be a care leaver too. And also, just to add, there's brilliant partnerships that One NHS Finance have made, in that we've got the Prince's Trust, which is now the King's Trust, in that they'll provide support to young people if needed with sort of interview prep, funding if need be, and SIPFA have also given Finance Insight placement students access to their careers hub, so they've got that to take advantage of too. Also, sort of young people such as Jada coming to the end of their scheme in September this year, there's plenty of wraparound support that we can offer from the academy as well. ONF, things like careers, guidance, CV writing, interview support, that sort of thing. So we can certainly connect up and give you that support where needed.
Brilliant. Thanks, Lois. As we said, I think it's just such a great opportunity for an alternative route into finance. And it does give you that taster of what a finance function is like. So if there's no further questions on insights, then we've come to the end of our session. So thank you so much for engaging. We have, as I said, we've got some Q&A time at the end. If there's anything that we've not covered, even if it's not about careers, if it's about anything to do with the academy that you'd like to ask, do please feel free. If not, then we'll hand back over to Aoife. No, all good. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was such a useful presentation. And if it's okay with you guys, I'll circulate that to everyone that attended today. And just to let you know that this session has been recorded, so it will be posted on our YouTube channel if you'd like to rewatch. Now, I think we'll leave that there if you don't have any questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.